Hi, good afternoon and good morning to everyone that has joined us. So we have got a very special session, and I have to say we have joined laughing because we've shared some stories before, and we've got a great panel, and we're going to be talking about our panel's experience about payroll and payroll tech and how they got into the industry and lessons learned along the way. Some positive, well, actually, most of them positive, a few negative, or a few lessons to learn, shall I say. So my name is Melanie Pitsey, for those of you that don't know me. We really want this session to be interactive, so we want to hear your experiences. I will be looking at my mobile, so I don't want you to think I'm being distracted. Unfortunately, the software is only so good, and I need to check your comments on my mobile. So anyway, so let's start. April, should we start with you? Do you want to introduce yourself, tell people about your role and how you got into the payroll industry?
Sure. Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. April Savino here. I am the Chief Operating Officer for Atlas, which is a company that provides employment services to customers who want to take advantage of global talent and expand their global footprint without putting in that investment or if they don't have their own entities themselves. So that's my current role. I got into payroll a long time ago, back in the 90s. My experience in the payroll industry has I've always been focused on HR, payroll, outsourcing, products, all of those types of things. Started in the Big Eight. Yes, the Big Eight. It was the Big Eight at one point, consulting firm, and ended up in the financial services industry. But again, all focused on HR, payroll, products, services, outsourcing. So yeah, that's me. That's my background.
Thank you so much, April. And Jess, let's move over to you.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for having us. It's great to be here with a great group of powerhouse women. So I'm Jess Chang. I lead the vendor services practice at Mercer. So Mercer, for those of you who don't know, has a few different lines of business, but we work with enterprise organizations on their digital transformation, but we also work with vendors like Atlas and Helios on, how they can create solutions that are going to transform and shape the now of work, the future of work. I've been in the global payroll space for almost my entire career. I got into it in the late 90s, early 2000s by accident, really. I think the word global really hooked me because I had a huge desire to travel and spent a lot of time in the vendor space, in the HR technology space, building solutions, helping vendors expand into new markets and figuring out, how to innovate in this very sexy and fun space.
And you know what? I'm so glad you said the 90s. I feel so much more welcome in this panel now, because I think that's when I joined the industry. So Christabel, okay, so I know you're new to the payroll industry, but you have got the background that firstly keeps people awake at night, and I think the word that everyone loves to talk about in payroll, so it's compliance. So Christabel, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. I did want to say a quick note about my name, as it's Women's History Month. So my name came from, obviously, my mother, who was a huge feminist, and she was a big supporter of women's rights, and she really admired Emily Pankhurst, who was a female suffragette who fought for the right to vote in Ireland and the UK. She had daughters called Christabel and Sylvia. So when my mum had two daughters, she called us Christabel and Sylvia. So I thought that was very appropriate for today's session. I ended up becoming a woman in technology. I started in IT support. I started originally in a healthcare regulator, and then I moved into IT project management. I then spent some time as a Scrum Master for a development team, and then I moved into an IT management role. When I moved into that role, ISO 27001, so this is an information security certification, which is very big in the IT security and compliance world. I took on that project, and that's kind of where my love affair of information security and compliance started. So I stayed in that role for a couple of years. That was actually based in Australia. And then I moved back to Ireland, where I became head of risk and compliance for Truata. So Truata was a data anonymization services company. So within the privacy enhancing technology space. I loved it there. MasterCard were one of our biggest customers. And we were very focused on building privacy and security into our product. I've now taken on the role of head of risk and compliance at Helios. So we are building out a cutting edge HCM and payments platform, which will be launching later this year in Q3. So yes, my first role in global payroll, and I'm very excited.
What made you choose the global payroll side? Because obviously the rest of us have been in the payroll industry for a very long time. What made you go into the global payroll industry?
Yeah, so there was a few elements to that. I had only ever really experienced payroll from an auditing perspective. So I definitely had faced some challenges around payroll with coming from an information security and data protection perspective. So there was a lot of manual tasks. There was a lot of areas where I noticed there could be human error. So it definitely really interested me. I've also enjoyed diversifying my career by changing industry. I found that's really helpful for me as I'm able to bring a different perspective. I also was really excited to join Helios leadership team. We have six people on the leadership team, and 3 of them are women. So diversity really is in our DNA at Helios. So that was a really big part of choosing to take on this role.
And that's actually a really positive ratio, isn't it? 3 women. So that's a really positive move forward, and it's really good to hear. So April, what are the most challenging aspects of managing payroll operations in today's business environment?
It's a great question. Payroll's always been complex. I mean, those of us who have been in the industry for a long time, we know there's just so much complexity, especially when you're looking at global payroll. Everything like tax regs, employment laws, compliance, need I say more? All of the rules and regs associated with it. I think that is probably continues to be the biggest challenge because so many things change each and every day. So there's really 2 things. Number one, it's creating technology, it's creating automation, it's really kind of getting us to where we've been to the future, which has to be technology enabled. But then and it's hard to do because so much changes so often. So it's really keeping up with all of the changes and making sure you're running a compliant organization and payroll operation for your clients and for yourself. So I think that's the biggest challenge that we face today, but it's nothing new. It's in fact a challenge that we've always had since payroll started.
Well, and I think you're also dealing with when it comes to global, you're dealing with so many different cultures, geographies, locations, and the expectations of your employees, your people across the globe, across the geographies are different. Not every employee, not every culture appreciates and approaches work in the same way. So how do you nuance that? And how do you manage payroll operations across the globe? It's definitely complex.
And one of the things that some of our members have discussed, actually a lot of our members have discussed, I shouldn't say some, is like the reporting side, the auditing side. If they've been, especially during COVID, when the board wanted to know the financials of payroll, and then they're having to organise a report, and as you guys know, sometimes it can take days. And it's not necessarily a click of a button.
That's right.
Yeah. And it really introduces some privacy and security risk as well by managing these reports very manually and in documents that could be misplaced.
Yeah, I had a client way back when who said, "I just want a single version of the truth."
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's good.
That would be great.
I think we might have to nick that one.
I'll give you her name. I think she's retired from the industry now, but she managed a huge, complex global organization, and it took her weeks back then to generate reports. And I'm sure she would probably say the same thing today, where she just wants one version of the truth. Her CEO just wants that perspective.
And I think sometimes some of the issues that we've heard, especially on the reporting side, is where they've dealt with multiple vendors, it's not the same report. So again, it's then spending time, they receive the report, but it's not branded the same, it's not looking the same. So again, there's additional stress there.
Mm-hmm.
So Jess, talking about technology, how has it impacted your approach to your job?
Well, I think it's the innovation that has been that we're pushing towards. You know, companies like Helios, like Atlas, who are pushing forward and helping organizations manage their boundaryless or their workforce that is truly global and the expectations that employees have. And I think that's really what's fueled a lot of the innovation and technology, is that we as people, we as employees are demanding more. We're expecting more. We know that we can live and work wherever we want. That jobs aren't necessarily located in one specific location at a desk. So it's one of those things where technology is really being forced to innovate, and we are being forced to innovate our technology, our capabilities, but also our perspectives in terms of how we approach the employee experience and managing employees, regardless of where they live and work.
And Christopher, how's it affected your position or your job?
Yeah, I suppose from my perspective, I'm always kind of looking at technology from privacy, security and compliance perspective. So really ensuring that we build really secure platforms to help with this move and shift into new technologies within HCM. That would be my area that I'd be looking at, is application security and making sure that we are holding and protecting people's PII, because obviously within payroll, there's a lot of very sensitive information. And it's really important that we leverage technology in a really good way to help protect this while also being innovative.
And April, before we move on, have you got anything to add?
You know, I agree with, Justin, Cristobal. I feel like we're in the same spot. I think, for us, it's really finding a way to look at end-to-end process from an employee, from a customer perspective, mapping that out, and then understanding where we can bring technology together to help facilitate that process in a more automated and efficient way. That's what we're looking at each and every day. We were in some workshops last week, in fact, and that's what we were looking at. Where are we seamless, and where do we have breakdowns, and what do we need to do to fill the gaps? And we're all focused on the technology solutions that can help us get there. So that's what I would say.
So we've had a comment here. So a single source of truth is a request I've heard repeatedly over the years and still do today. So hopefully one day, it will stop. But obviously, that comes down to technology. So let's talk about leadership. Can you, April, I'm going to pick on you for this one. Sorry. Sure. Can you discuss a significant leadership challenge you faced and how you overcame it?
Sure. So, I think over the years, obviously, and in the topic of National Women's Month, as we're we're still in the month, I think as a leader and growing up within the industry, definitely have experienced many, many challenges from when, first coming into my career, predominantly male dominated, organization. And so I always felt as if one of the things I had to be careful about was to be categorized, whether it was the demo girl or, Vanna White, whatever those things were. I always had to be careful. I always felt like I had to work harder in order to be viewed as good or equal to my male counterparts and my male peers. So from my perspective, overcoming the challenge, and that's really what we need to focus on today. Like, how do you overcome that is, to me, it's being deliberate about the experiences you want to gain, using it as a motivation to really get to where you want to be. But also, to me as well, it's being deliberate about where you want to get to, and then finding a way to get there. That was, I would say, the challenge. I think one of the other things that helped me as a leader and as early on in my career was focusing on finding that person who I could see as a mentor. So I will never forget, it was early 2000s, maybe late 90s. I was sitting in a boardroom, with, a lot of partners. We were entertaining a very large financial institution client. At the time, it was a sales meeting. And historically, I was always invited to the sales meetings to present, to demo, to talk about our service and our products. But I sort of sat in the corner. I was never really sitting at the table. I mean, these were partners and predominantly male partners at that. So they would invite me up. I would present. And I will never forget the day this one woman partner shows up in the meeting from the organization I was working for. Her name was Margaret Ann Cole. I'll never forget it. I still keep in touch with her today. And she was a powerhouse. She took her seat, she commanded the room, and she drove that meeting. And I remember coming out of that meeting, still very young, and I said to her, wow, that was incredible. And she said, why are you sitting in the corner? And I said, well, that's just where I've always sat. I do the demos. And she said, if you want to be considered a leader, if you want to be part of the meeting, you need to sit at the table and you need to take your seat at the table. And so I think that's the other thing. I think from a challenge perspective, like, you have to take your seat. No one's going to give it to you. You have to find that opportunity. No one's going to come to you and offer it to you. So for me, that was sort of like the biggest aha moment. And that's sort of what I use as the catalyst to get over those kinds of challenges.
And Jess, what about you? What challenges have you come across and how have you overcome them? Have you had to, I wanted to say, don't put baby in the corner when you were saying, you sat in the corner. But have you had any similar experiences or totally different?
Yeah, I mean, talk about putting baby in the corner. We hear a little bit about the mom tax where, you women go and you have children and whatnot. And it's, while women do take time to, have children, that's not a hindrance. That's actually a benefit. Ask any mom to do 17 different things at any given point in time, and you'll see how a true multitasker works. But it's raising your hand and it's going and saying, you know what? Don't put baby in the corner. Don't put me and the baby in the corner, but take that opportunity, give the perspective of women who can wear multiple hats and to really raise them up. But on the coaching that I would give is, don't be afraid to raise your hand. Just because somebody has a perception of what you should be. Growing up in a very, Asian traditional household, culturally, women were taught to be, diminutive and quiet and diligent. And I'm kind of the antithesis, much to my mother's chagrin. But, it's the raise your hand. Don't be afraid to take your seat at the table. And don't even ask for a seat at the table. Just take it and own it, because we all have really wonderful perspectives, regardless of where our backgrounds come. And the backgrounds that we have are really what make us unique.
Yeah, just to add to that, that's interesting, because the mentorship piece, I think, is really important. And I remember at a point in my career, I was facing quite a big learning curve, and I was struggling a little bit to talk up in meetings. I was feeling a little bit overwhelmed, and sometimes I don't know, for myself, I can find it hard to put up my hand and, make sure I'm sitting at the table. So an amazing woman I reported into, and who was also a mentor of mine, had spotted this, and we talked about it. And what she was able to do for me then was actually call my name out in meetings and say, Christabel, I'd like to hear your opinion on this, and, really include me and bring me in more. And it had such an impact on my career because she was such a senior leader, and that just brought me into the fold. So it's really something that I try and consciously do for other women now, like make sure that I'm hearing like everyone's voice on the team, because sometimes there are people who aren't as comfortable to grab the seat and jump up onto the table, but they need a little bit of help, and I think that was really helpful for me.
Well, and I think we talked a lot about women mentors. One of my greatest mentors is actually a male. It's the one that gave me a chance in this space, and he was the one that said, don't be afraid to raise your hand, challenge, get up in front of a room full of men who think that you should be, the quiet little one sitting in the corner. Ask the questions, put your hand up. And mentorship, I think, is one of those super important things that is not gender specific. And I think we all as leaders have a role, regardless of whether we're men and women. But I think in the spirit of this, it's how do we raise up the women and give them that opportunity to have a voice and recognize that.
So I'm going to be slightly controversial here. In my career, I have had 2 female leaders who I would say would be blocking you in a career. However, one of my best mentors was a guy, and he didn't treat me as a female. He treated me as a manager, as a director, as a leader. And he was one of the best managers and mentors I've ever had. I still speak to him now. He's retired, he's not working anymore. But, if I can meet with him, I would. And he knew me. He knew if I needed him, I would be in touch with him. If I didn't need him, he'll just leave me alone. But he would be that person I could spend an hour, 2 hours just talking to. So obviously, it's great if you can have a female mentor. It's great if you can have a male mentor. But I think the most important thing is to have somebody who gets to know you and understands you and your skill set and doesn't have a hidden agenda. And I think it's hard to find those people, but there are people there.
Absolutely. I've found that when you find them as a manager, those are the folks I keep in touch with long term, because even if they're no longer my manager, I found my way back to him now. But your career, you've got your journey, and it takes you different places in order to, see those different experiences. But at the end of the day, I mean, there's nothing like working with and for someone like that, who's going to open up opportunities, who's going to be direct with you, who's going to give you direct feedback to help you grow with no hidden agendas, like you mentioned, Melanie. There's nothing like having that.
Well, it's the concept of that board of directors, right? Who's going to sit at your table and give you the brutal, honest truth, but who is going to find ways to uplift you and to encourage you and open doors or break glass for you or with you together.
You want that person that's excited, don't you? That excited person that goes, oh my God, this person has something, and they believe in you. And I think everyone needs to have that person, even if they don't work with them anymore. It's like maybe a soul, isn't it? That I don't know if you believe in that sort of stuff, but that you connect in some sort of way. So it just had, sorry, Jess, I put this over your face while you was talking, but Marcy, thank you so much. She agreed with you, Jess, with juggling, and Rhoda, thank you again. You have to be deliberate what you want to achieve. You have to fight, don't you? Or you have to have an understanding of what you want to achieve. So in the payroll industry, I'm slightly obsessed with this topic. So in the payroll industry, there are so many women in ratio to men and women. There are more women that work in payroll. So why are women not represented so much as leaders? What's your thoughts on that? I'll go to April first, and then I'll ask everyone.
So, I think it's a good question, and I can't answer like definitively, but here's what I would say. to change that moving forward in the future. There are a lot of women in this industry, and there are a lot of women who have stayed in this industry for their entire careers. In order to move up from a leadership perspective, we know that you need other experiences in addition to what you have today. So I think as we continue to move forward, women raising their hand and taking on opportunities, for example, P&L management. A business leader needs to understand how to manage a P&L, global team leadership and managing cross-border teams. Again, something that, you know, if they can turn and they can focus on, they will then have an additional tool, so to speak, to put into their tool belt to be able to get to that next level from a leadership perspective. So my perspective on it, and this is what I encourage my teams to do, really anyone, you know, women and men, is the more experiences, being deliberate about the experiences you can gain, you're setting yourself up to be that future leader. And so to your point, Melanie, a lot of women in the space, we've got to make sure we're opening opportunities for them to get to diversify their portfolio, so to speak, and to learn new things and to not stay within their given space year over year so that they can learn, they can grow, and eventually get to that next level leadership role.
So Christabel, do you agree that you need to push the boundaries, try new things? It's almost like not working in your role, isn't it? It's moving out slightly.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I'd fully support that. So I've bounced around. This will be my third startup. So I absolutely love getting involved in everything. I found it's just been so helpful for me moving forward in my career. A big thing I would say, obviously being new to the payroll industry, I would say representation is really important. And I've noticed that throughout my career when, you know, early days, I didn't see women leaders in technology in a lot of the jobs I was working in. And when I had the opportunity to be an IT manager, I hired a lot of women. Now, fairly, of course, I asked the recruiters to send me an equal number of CVs, which was a great way to kind of, you know, even the playing field a little bit. And also what I noticed when I started doing events like this or networking, that women would reach out to me and want to be part of my team because they want to work for another like female leader who is similar to them. So it ended up being, you know, a great opportunity to move more women into leadership roles, so that I'm not up there on my own, you know, bringing other women with you.
Jess, over to you.
Yeah, I love Christabel's analogy right there. It's like we're dragging women up the hill with us, you know, one woman or many women at a time. And how do we find ways to build that ladder as opposed to dragging them up, you know, with sheer, you know, strength and willpower? It's, you know, there's so many adjacent skills that are related to payroll, and it's, you know, finding the opportunities, giving opportunities to upskill and to adjacent skill, and lift up women in payroll so that they have that opportunity. How do you continue to innovate? Payroll has historically been a very administrative task, but, you know, with the innovation that's coming up, how do we take those individuals with a tremendous amount of knowledge and also a tremendous amount of insight into an organization and the people within the organization and leverage them to make an organization and help transform an organization for the better?
So there's two things here. I want to pick up a comment for Rhoda. Thank you so much for getting involved, Rhoda. So one of the questions is like, how do we empower and foster female colleagues with growth? But one of the things that I think are quite interesting is that more women suffer from imposter syndrome. I know I can suffer from that. And I think sometimes, you know, I have to talk to myself to give myself encouragement. It's not necessarily that other people talk to me, but it's getting that that confidence. How do we do that as a team effort, Jess?
So one of my mentors actually told me to read Amy Cuddy's book on this power stance, and it's the superhero stance. And there's some science behind it. Amy Cuddy I think she's at Harvard right now, but stand in front of a mirror for 5 minutes before a big meeting in a superhero stance, which sounds completely ridiculous the first time you do it, but I guarantee you it absolutely works. And I'm someone who suffers from imposter syndrome too. I think we all probably did at some point or still do. And it's being confident and having the knowledge and the belief that you know what you're talking about. You have a right to take that seat at the table and have a voice. You don't need to be in the corner. Everybody has a unique perspective, regardless of where you are in your career. It's so important to share that voice. And from that, you will be uplifted. People will find you. You will find people who will champion you and raise you up.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd agree with that wholeheartedly. I think the biggest piece of advice I would give, and this is what's really, really helped me moving into a leadership role, is working on my self-belief and my value, and really decoupling that from a fancy title and a cool company, and really, you know, building that core foundation for myself, so that I can kind of move forward, especially within male-dominated industries.
I would agree. And some of the things from an advice perspective, I would say I typically do going into big meetings is just putting in the work, rolling up my sleeves, getting in there, making sure I am I'm prepared. You know, it goes back to the saying that we all heard way back when, proper preparation, preparing, making sure you're anticipating questions that can come in. I mean, at the end of the day, when you've got that subject matter expertise, you can be confident because you probably have more knowledge about the topic than anyone else in the room. That alone will give you the confidence to be able to raise your hand. But I also agree that, as I've mentored many, many women throughout my career, and that's really what I focus on now, it's making sure you pull out the confidence in them, calling out where their strengths are. And to your point, when raising their hand for them, if they're not raising it, because they've got the information that the company needs or the meeting needs to move forward in the right direction. So I think it's, mentoring those who maybe don't have their voice yet, but if you don't have your voice, showing up to the meetings and knowing your stuff. I mean, at the end of the day, that should provide a lot of confidence from a building perspective.
And also I have in our company, we're majority female and younger than me. But I love it because the younger generation, even though I do apologise for keep saying the younger generation because I don't look at their age, but if you are younger, you know so much more about technology, and it doesn't matter if you're female. Like they have this power and this knowledge of technology, and hey, let's use that and encourage other females to show what they know and to use that. So we got Dee, thank you so much for your comment. I think the best thing we can do for one another is provide understanding. I had a CFO tell me I should not be friends with my team. I've been told that as well, Dee. And I had to explain to him that we as women have to emotionally attach, as it is part of our makeup. It's not only gives us personal understanding of someone's situation in life and work. I hear work-life balance way too much where bosses say, but don't do it. Understanding what that means to your team individually is crucial. I think you do. We are, I know I've been talking about, women can do what they want to do, but we are slightly different. We do have maybe different emotional intelligence, or we do have different needs, and it's working with your team to succeed, really, isn't it?
I want to know about my team. We're all humans. And when you care about your team and the people around you and the people you work with, I think it makes me certainly, and I think many people want to invest more, work harder, strive to succeed in ways that you never thought possible because you are personally invested in them. Yes. You know who they are as individuals beyond just an employee or a team member.
And everyone has an off day. Everyone has struggles, and I think it's so important to just, especially if we're all working remotely, is to understand or just pick up, do you need extra support?
Totally.
Dahlia, she's recommended something for imposter syndrome, hashtag I'm remarkable. So thank you so much for any other tips. That's great to share. We've got a lot of people on today's session, so the more we can help each other out, I think the better. So we did sort of have a bit of a giggle before we joined, and maybe that's the wrong way of saying it, a giggle, but talking about different experiences and how ironic they are. Because I said before, I think sometimes you have to laugh at situations because otherwise you can be angry or, you know, it's too negative. So Christabel, I'm going to ask you this question. Have you had any sort of challenges, or have you encountered any particular challenges as a woman within the tech industry or within your career?
Yeah, absolutely. It can feel quite isolating, as I've always been in most of my teams, I've been the only woman. So you can definitely feel a little bit outnumbered, and it can be hard to make sure you're being your authentic self and not kind of leaning into the crowd mentality. One of the, I guess, funnier stories I had was I went for an interview, and the man who was interviewing me repeatedly used the term, "I'm looking for a right-hand man." And all I need is a right-hand man. So I kind of knew, even if I was offered the job, I probably wasn't the right person for the job if he was looking for a right-hand man. So definitely looking at some of those language biases, you know, and calling people out in a nice way and just letting them know that those sort of languages can be problematic and can make people feel a little isolated.
April.
Oh boy, where do I even begin? So many. Here's what I would say. You know, these date back to the 90s, but we don't have to go all the way back there. Mentioned a couple earlier, you know, demo girl. I've been, you know, referred to as show us Vanna. You know, many different instances, and recent instances too. But I think, you know, Christabel, I think what you just said is so important. You know, as we're operating in a global environment and a global workforce right now, there are different cultures within the global world. And so we just need to make sure that if we're feeling a certain way, if something's being said and we don't appreciate it based on how we've been raised from a cultural perspective, I think calling it out in the right way and having the conversation is super important. You know, a couple of things have happened recently in the last few years. And I think just being honest and calling it out and explaining why it doesn't make you feel good or whatever that is just really important. But yes, lots and lots and lots of challenges to going back 25 years plus.
Jess, have you got anything to add to that?
So many stories. I think we could probably write a horrifying horror novel. Talk a little bit about them. You know, being a mom, needing to be flexible in terms of the life and the work and that balance that exists. But, you know, it's acknowledging that we don't all look the same or speak the same or approach the world from the same perspective. Early on in my career, I had a male colleague before Zoom was a thing and video conferencing was a thing, who met me for the first time and said, "You don't look like how you sound." And I said, "Well, what's that supposed to mean? Like, what did you think that I was going to look like relative to how I sound?" And it struck me as something that in a global function, in a global market and industry, that we shouldn't have perceptions of how people look and sound. And we all have those perceptions, but it's taking those stories that we have and those experiences and channeling them into making us stronger, making sure that the women that are climbing up behind us don't ever feel that same way.
Yeah, and we have moved on. One of my favorite questions in an interview was, "When are you going to have children?" I said, "Never, because I'm barren." And that was it. He didn't know what to say. And I thought, well, if you're going to ask me an awkward question, I'm going to just make you feel really awful. So I don't think that question would ever be asked now. So we have moved on. You know, we are getting there, but there are still some challenges. So we do have a question here. How have remote and flexible work environments impacted women, especially those balancing caregiving duties in the HR tech space? What accommodations are organisations making to support their female employees and leaders? Because not everyone does have children, but they may be a caregiver to a relative. You know, that's a really important topic. Have you seen since COVID, or since we've been working remotely, have you seen any changes or any way that business have been supporting? Jess, have you seen anything?
Yeah, I think it comes down to leadership and individual leaders. And I think it's really setting the expectation that work doesn't happen 9 to 5, especially in a global environment. 9 to 5 is different for everybody across geographies, across countries even. So I think the pandemic forced the conversation around flexibility and whatnot, and understanding that get your job done. If I have to go and pick up my son at 3 o'clock, great. If I have to take him to swimming lessons, great. There's other times where, he'll be in bed and, we'll pick back up in meetings or whatnot. So it's understanding that work doesn't happen within a specific time frame, and setting that expectation and setting that example, really, that, hey, if you have a doctor's appointment, if you need to go and take your dog or your parent to an appointment, go and do that. We're grown-ups. And we all are working towards the same goal, and we all want to be successful, but how and when we work is always, it's a flexible, and I think we need to be understanding about that as we transform.
And do you know what, you said a key word there, we're all grown-ups. Christabel, have you seen anything sort of more flexibility or more benefits given?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I was lucky enough actually to work with a company that had started to embrace remote working before COVID. And there was a good few women in that organization who had children, and we were able to work our hours around school hours and pickup times. And I just found that was really, really helpful for women especially, and for men as well. It's great to see. I have a previous boss who'd always have to rush out to do the crash run. So it's great to see that it's benefiting both men and women.
That's true, men and women. Yeah. April, sorry, I didn't mean to have talked you there, Christabel. April, have you got anything to add?
I would agree. I mean, I agree when Jess said it's up to us as leaders to make sure that we are creating this type of environment. That is what it is. A company can say they have a flexible culture. Everyone can work from home, great. But if they're mandating a 9 to 5, if they're not allowing people to really get that flexibility in there, we're not really helping anyone, male or female. So at the end of the day, it's making sure that, we are, we're practicing what we preach. We're making sure, as a new leader, I'm coming into Atlas. I'm here a couple of months now. And I remember my first team meeting, talking about it. Listen, we're all very busy. We're all balancing work life. We are a global organization. We have teams everywhere, over 160 countries. We can't be on 24/7. So let's focus. Let's get our work done. And if you need to take the hour here, the couple hours there, do it. Because at the end of the day, we have to have a work-life balance. It's important for all of us so that we don't get burnt out. I mean, payroll in this business, one of the biggest challenges is that women get burnt out, men get burnt out. It is a very complex, time-consuming, we work a lot of hours business. So bringing in that flexibility, making sure that everyone understands from the leadership down, this is okay. We understand. We've been in your shoes. And so we're all on one team. If you've got to step out, let me know and I'll cover for you. Making those getting that out there and making sure people understand, we mean it. We're adults. We just need to get the job done. And when we do it is when we do it.
And it's not work-life balance. It's not just work life anymore and life. It's just life. And work happens in the fabric of life.
That's right.
Yeah. And we have a comment here. I had a male operations manager tell me I wasn't going to progress any further than the job I was in if there was a challenge there. And that could be anybody. It could be a female manager. It could be a male manager. I think that's one of the things I've learned is when people are negative to you, it doesn't matter what sex they are, you've got to turn that around. Of course, it's going to make you feel a bit crappy. I was going to say something worse, but obviously we're on LinkedIn Live. But I think somehow you have to think, what is their issue? It's not you. Mm-hmm. They have an issue. And you need to turn that around and think, do you know what? I'm going to so prove you wrong.
Yeah, use it to build your resiliency.
That's right. But at the same time, don't wait too long, because at the end of the day, there are other companies out there and other people out there that are going to value you as a person and your contributions. So I'm all about letting it motivate you to like prove them wrong. I'm definitely there. At the same time, don't continue for too long trying to do that, because at the end of the day, there are many companies and leaders out there that are going to value you, and you can, and there are other fish in the sea, so to speak.
That's a good point. Get to know when to cut free. And I think actually, do you know what? That's one issue that payroll professionals, whether you're a specialist, manager, director, leader, own a company, I do feel that because you care about what you do, you know how important your job is, you don't know when to stop.
Right.
And it's learning that. So thanks, Dee. The burnout effect signals a significant risk for companies to lose their top female leaders and the advancements they've made. So important. And thank you so much for the link there, Dee. We can get onto that later on. Let's have a look. As a solo working parent, remote work has changed my life and my family's lives. My focus on all aspects of life has improved in ways I didn't expect and appreciative for. Wow, that's really good to see, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Really good.
Yeah, it is.
That person is a great leader.
Yeah, really, really good. Because we talk about COVID so much, don't we? And we do talk about benefits, but it's really good to hear an actual example of how that does, how it has helped. So we're coming sort of towards an end, and I know I've got a couple of questions, and I know we could talk forever. What advice would you give to women who are looking to enter the HCM and payroll technology industries today? Christabel, I'm going to start off with you, because you've entered this industry fairly recently.
Yeah, so I'll probably go back to what I've already said, just around your self-belief and value and knowing how that transfers into a new industry. I think coming from privacy enhancing technologies, I'll be able to bring some different insights into the industry. And I think just you need to, believe in yourself and not be afraid to change industry and know that you'll bring a lot to it.
So April, before, which I should have asked right at the beginning, what were you doing before you entered payroll?
I was right out of college.
Oh my God. So you went into payroll.
Just like you, found myself here, went to work for the Big 8 and, was put into the HR payroll space. So yes.
So what advice would you give people to enter this industry?
I think it's a really great time to enter. I think, you mentioned it earlier, Melanie, when it comes to technology, this industry is ripe for disruption, and technology is going to do it. AI, automation is going to do it. So this is now the right time. I would say overall, my advice to anyone entering the space, male or female, just make sure you're creating your own path. Don't wait for opportunities to come to you. Be deliberate as far as the experience you want to get based on the path that you want to take from a career perspective. And that can shift and change. I joke with my team all the time. I still don't know who I want to be when I grow up. And that's okay. At the end of the day, our path ebbs and flows. And I think that's really important. I think it's also about, putting in the work, and there's going to be a learning curve. Payroll is complex. Roll up your sleeves, do as much digging as you can, learn, listen, and get that subject matter expertise, because all of these organizations are absolutely global and there's so much complexity surrounding that. I would say surround yourself with a great team. Strong teams are important. I never want to be the smartest person in the room. I allow my teams to be the smartest people in the room and all the members on the team, and collectively we're a pretty great team. And then I think ultimately it's just making sure that at the end of the day, you do find that mentor. When I think someone just brought up networking and your network. It's important. As you find really network, use each other. You're not alone. As you find strong leaders within an organization, male or female, either way, it doesn't matter. I think creating that connection and that to be able to be vulnerable, to be able to ask questions relative to how am I doing, to gather that feedback. Feedback's a gift. I think that's really important. And then continuing with those relationships long term, even if you're not working directly together anymore, keeping those networks, I think is always super important as well.
Jess, have you got anything to add?
Other than I agree with April and Christabel, don't be afraid to chart your own path. The industry, the market is ripe for innovation, and we don't know exactly what it's going to look like yet. So don't be afraid to create and pave your own path that doesn't necessarily exist today.
That's right.
And that's the exciting part of it. It's a little scary, but your path is your own, and it may not have been some path that someone else has walked today. But spend the time, immerse yourself, read, learn, follow, connect, and those things, and raise your hand. And that's going to really make sure that you can be whoever you want to be when you grow up, even if you don't know what that is.
Yeah, that's such a good comment. You can be whoever you want to be, and also just try something, try something new, get out of your comfort zone and see what works. I always have this thing, as long as it doesn't cost a lot of money, just try it. Just try whatever you want. So again, thanks Dee so much for getting involved in today's conversation. Lastly, women do not have to do it all. We can say no or ask for help. To her point, a great team is crucial. So that's really, I was talking to somebody yesterday who was networking with somebody within the UK payroll industry, and it's almost like she found her soul buddy 14 months ago. Like, they didn't know each other, and then now they're like the best of friends, but supporting each other because they have different views. And that's amazing if you can have that relationship. They're not in the same company, they're not even in the same part of the UK, but they bounce off each other, and there's that independence because it's not in the same company. So let's finish it off with, what does the future look like? April.
Technology. We've got to have, more technology, bringing systems together, single source of truth, super important. I know we started the conversation there. We'll end the conversation from my perspective here. We've got to have that single source of truth. So from my perspective, integration, automation, efficiency, and it's got to be on a global scale. At the end of the day, things are changing every single day. We know it. It's the world we live in from a payroll and an HR perspective. How do we automate? How do we simplify? And how do we create additional technology and advancements in the payroll industry?
Jess?
I'm going to take it one step further. Transform. Use technology to transform your organization globally, change the way you're managing your employees, meet your people where they are, and find ways to connect them and celebrate what makes us all different and unique in ways that allows us to bring ourselves to work, but also blends the work and the life, and make sure that it's global. The world is global. The world, despite the fact that you need a passport to travel to different countries, the world truly is borderless.
Christabel?
Yeah, love all of that. I guess I'd reiterate that more automation, absolutely leveraging new technologies such as AI, doing it in an ethical and privacy conscious way. And of course, ensuring all of our new technology platforms have security, privacy, and quality built into them.
So, oh my God, we could do a whole LinkedIn on AI. But Rick has just put a question. Have we got time? I know we were wrapping it up, but then Rick has put a really good question on comments. How can men continue to support, create opportunity, champion and uplift women in the global workforce? So we've got a few minutes. Obviously, just asking for a friend. Thanks, Rick. Christabel, should we start with this? Do you want to start with this one?
Yeah, absolutely. I think joining in the conversations, joining these LinkedIn lives, and hearing women's stories and understanding what their journey has been like, and why these events are still needed today. So participate in these kind of initiatives. I think that's really important.
And April?
I would completely agree. I mean, even asking the question to me shows that, you know, the leadership is there, the desire is there. I think, you know, making sure that we're finding ways to bring that out of each and every woman we have on our team, giving them the confidence, giving them the support they need to feel confident, whether it's in their presentation or even in small settings from a work environment perspective. I think it's giving them the opportunity, but also making sure they understand that, you know, we're giving you the opportunity here. Now is your turn to take the opportunity. Like, you've got to take it. I can't give it to you. Like, let's work together to see how you can, you know, where you can take this to the next level. So that would be my recommendation. Thanks, Rick, for the question.
And Jess, final word from you.
Be part of the conversation. It's what April and Christabel said. Thank you, Rick, for the question. In and of itself is a sign that that's supporting women in technology, women in the workplace, women in HCM and payroll, giving us the voice and an opportunity to take a seat at the table, because sometimes we need that encouragement to step out of the corner and to take that seat and to give us an opportunity to have our voice there.
So I did see that there's a comment on equal pay. I think that's going to be another topic for another time. We did discuss that before we came on, and we've got a long way to go on that one. Maybe before my end of days, I hope that we do see equal pay, because at the moment it's like 170 years. But anyway, that's a whole nother subject. Do you know what? I just want to say thank you so much for everyone that has joined today. We've had a really amazing amount of audience join us today. And thank you so much for the participation. But thank you so much to April, Jess, and Christabel. And every time I call you Christabel now, it has so much more meaning. So thank you for all of your comments. If anybody wants to get in touch with you, can they do that via LinkedIn?
Absolutely.
And we mentioned mentors a lot. If you come onto the GPA website, we do have a mentoring program. It's totally free. We have leaders mentoring people coming into the payroll industry, but we also have mentors mentoring people who are leaders and directors. So we have a full range, and globally as well. So you're welcome to join the GPA website. Thank you, everyone that's joined, and we hope to see you all again soon. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.